Hi guys, welcome back. So today we are out in my garage. We started pulling out fall and Halloween decorations. We need to work on some tombstones. We have a few from previous years that they're still in really great shape despite the fact that they are 10, 11 years old. However, my amazing human partner left town for work and left me with a giant pile of new blank tombstones to start painting. They're just made out of plywood. I don't have footage of him cutting them out, but I promise you the internet is chock full of instructionals on how to do that. Ours are made out of 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch ply. I'm pretty sure he got all of our tombstones out of like one sheet of plywood. Like, it really doesn't take a lot. If you don't have the tools to cut plywood, another great option, foam insulation board. It comes in like 1 inch thick sheets at your local hardware stores, local home stores. And you can cut that stuff with like a serrated knife. That would also be a really great option. You just don't want to use something that's going to deteriorate in inclement weather. Which is why ours are made out of plywood, and our older ones, like I said, they're like 11 years old. And there's some like paint. There's some like paint chips and stuff, but nothing awful. Before I head inside, I want to just do I want to show you really quick. Oh, get back here. Oh, it rolled away. So, I don't know if you can see it, but our plywood is textured. We textured it to intentionally look like stone. The way that we did that is when we're at the depot, we grab the paint samples that are returns. This guy was 50 cents. We get them in like grays, beiges, whatever colors that you would find in natural stone. And trust me, we always have a ton of them here in my face every single time we go. So it's not like you're gonna have to hunt really hard for this. And then what we do is, because cheapo, I don't want to spend money if I don't have to. We just get some dirt from the backyard and some sand and mix the paint together on a plate and slap it on. Oh, the hair is nice. It's humid. It's gross, guys. So I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna get some air conditioning going because the paint is going to cure a whole lot better if I do this inside. I'll show you the products that I use and how I make my really realistic looking marble tombstones rock. Because Halloween is what, like 9 weeks away? I gotta get my ass in gear. This is a really big pile, guys. Whoa. That's a really big pile of tombstones that need to be painted. So I gotta get going. I'll meet you inside. This is Billy Butcherson, who will be joining the ranks of Master Gracie this year and all of the others. He needs a little bit more work. I need to come back and touch up some of these words that we lost when I did a little bit more marbling. But I put some cracks. We've got some moss. And now this is completely flat. All of the 3D effects that are happening with this is all just from shading with the paint. And then this guy, I've already marbled. And I think that this one's going to be 0 from Nightmare Before Christmas. The products that I use in order to get my really cool marbling effect on my tombstones is right here. I've got some student grade acrylics. I don't like to use craft grade acrylics because you're not going to get the color payoff, you're not going to get the coverage, and you're not going to get the sun bleaching staying power or anti-sun bleaching staying power that you're going to get from some of your more heavier acrylics. I like to use a combination of browns and blacks. I've got Burt Umber, Raw Umber, Payne's Gray, Mars Black, Cadmium Yellow, Titanium White, and then this is where the magic happens. Matte Medium is your, this is going to be your best friend in this project. It's going to help keep your acrylic open for blending, and it's going to make these colors nicely blend into each other to give you that marble effect. This is not expensive. I get it at Walmart for like $3 for this giant 36-ounce tube. These all are from various places, Hobby Lobby, Michael's. For craft projects and inexpensive paint for craft projects, I like the Artist Loft and the Master's Touch. They're much less expensive than, say, your Liquitex. I don't use these for fine art painting. I just prefer them over your, say, $1 a tube apple barrel craft paints. And these guys run only $2 each. So per ounce, it's comparable to craft paint. So there's that. I also forgot to mention about brushes. I don't use my good brushes for this again. I have good brushes, but you guys only ever see me use my craft brushes. These are also the brushes that my kid uses when she's painting, and so I don't care that they're a little damaged, they're fuzzy, they're in bad shape. The reason that I'm using these is because of the sand texture in my tombstone to start with. That's the fuzziness of these is going to help that seep in. It's going to, and it's only going to help add to the illusion that I'm looking for. And they're already in bad shape, so I'm not crying when working on this makes them worse. So there's that. I like to use cheap, inexpensive plastic plates because once this is dry, it'll peel right off and I can start fresh. Again, I think I paid 25 cents for it. So you don't have to have really expensive products to have fun in art. And I'm giving myself a giant helping of medium. It kind of looks like white, but if you look, that's my white and that's my matte medium. It's much brighter than this. The white is much brighter. I'm gonna give myself a little extra white because that's been sitting there for a couple of hours. That's my Payne's Gray. It's still fine. It's been sitting there for a couple of hours, but it's still fine. This guy has a little bit more of green shade to it than the Burt Umber. Has a little bit more of a red hue to it. And then my blacks, Mars Black. That's my black of choice. And then I am using the Payne's Gray, which pulls in a little bit of a really pretty blue hue into my marbling. And then I have Cad Yellow because when I mix the Cad Yellow with my Mars Black, we end up with a lovely moss green. And you'll see that. She's already in bad shape, so I'm not worried. I wet my brush a little bit. This will help the medium flow off my bristles better. And then I'm coming into my matte medium and I'm loading her up. And again, this really doesn't matter what color your tombstone background is, as long as it's in the gray family. Okay, so my brush is all loaded up with matte medium. Bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm grabbing some black, grab some brown. To get a nice mud color. Love mud colors. Add a little white to nice gray, muddy gray color. A little bit more of the matte medium, and then literally just get in here and scumble away. And every time I go in for more paint, I'm gonna get a slightly different combination. So that I left off. I like to add a little bit darker features to the bottom because that's where dirt splashing back from like rain's kickback might develop. And then just scumble away, like let your bristles splay out. So you can see there how just like the natural dirt and rocks that we added to the paint adds really cool texture. Teeny bit of that Payne's gray, so you can see how much it'll add a little bit of blue. A little bit of white that time. And just go back and forth between the colors until you have some fun marbling. And again, that matte medium is what is allowing this paint to smear really, really beautifully, really well and cleanly and get down into those nooks and crannies that the sand creates. And it's also allowing these paints to marble. It's what's giving me, it's what's giving me the look that I want without me having to fight for it. Just smash it in, marble it around, play with the colors, go back and forth between your lights and darks. This is utterly and completely up to you. If you want this to be a older tombstone, slightly darker colors lends more towards that effect. Because the stone would naturally get darker over time from dirt and rainwater and sun and the great thing about this is that every single tombstone ends up completely different, completely individual. And so no matter what you do, all your tombstones, yeah, they'll look like they all came out of the same cemetery, which is really cool. But, you know, they're all different ages. So now what I'm doing is I went in with a little bit of my Payne's Gray and my matte medium, and I just mixed it into that black brown mixture that I already had. And it's smattering it in like sort of a jaggedy line. And this is how I'm gonna get cracks. So blues typically are great for creating shadows, and that is going to make your crack look like it's sunken into your stone. And so we'll create that shadow of blue, that shadow with that blue cast. And I'm adding a lot of matte medium to this. Maybe even add a little bit of black to deepen it. I don't want white in there, but keep it in a blue family. And I'm just bouncing. That's all I'm doing. Bounce, 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 bounce into this jaggedy line. And we can do that somewhere else too. Let's get a little bit more Payne's Gray. I'm gonna crack from a corner. Bounce, bounce, bounce. And don't forget to add it to the edges, because that's gonna sell it from the side once it's in your yard. If you just stopped at this top, people will be like, what? What? Now I'm going to give this a few minutes to start to set. We can also add some moss. Again, to get my moss effect, I'm coming in with another cheap kids craft brush that's already been beat to high heaven. Actually, I like this one too. This one's by Plaque. And these come in like 4 and 5 packs for like $2 or $3. This guy's already been beat to high heaven. He's just been washed, which is why he doesn't look as bad. But what you're looking for is just, it's in bad shape already. These are my kids' craft brushes. So that's why they all look like this. Here. That's a smaller version. Already beat to high heaven. That's what you want. You do not need fancy, expansive brushes. Okay. Right. To get my moss effect, I'm gonna take my 1-inch flat, cheap craft brush that's already in bad shape. And I'm gonna bring a little bit of my Mars Black over to my Cad Yellow. We're gonna get a really cool green. It's very mossy green. And the reason is because it's already a black that has a lot of yellow and green in it. And then Cad is a cool yellow. So it's already got a little bit of blue to it. It's not a warm yellow. So these are good friends for making a nice moss green. And then we're gonna do the exact same thing. We're just gonna bounce. Don't forget the top, because moss will grow on the top. And then bounce, 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 bounce. Moss might grow in that crack, or on that crack, or in that crack. So we're gonna bounce, 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 bounce. Follow that crack. and moss might grow on this crack. Bounce, bounce, bounce. Now notice I did not add any matte medium to my black and my yellow to make my moss. I want these thick peaks. I want them. And I don't want this to thin out at all. So I did not add any of the matte medium. I just came in with my Mars Black and my Cad Yellow. My brush was damp from having been washed. Okay. And I'm also going to come up from the ground a little bit because, you know, moss comes up from the ground a little bit. A little bit more yellow to make it brighter. Sometimes I go ham on moss, sometimes I don't. That's totally up to you on what you want your tombstone to look like. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry and I'll see you in a few minutes.
Meanwhile.
Okay, so while I am waiting for this to finish drying, I went and used up the rest of the paint that was on my palette on this guy. Yes, it's Donald Duck's hat. And we have the funniest epitaph for him. So stick around till the end of the video to see how we kill off Donald Duck.
1 hour later.
Okay, I have given everything a solid hour of dry time. Everything is dry to the touch. So we are good there. What I'm going to do on this next layer of marbling, I'm staying with my, it's wet, so it's okay. I'm staying with my cheap plastic brushes, and I'm going to add a little bit of a brighter, lighter version of this gray right on up to these edges of cracks, because that's going to give the illusion of 3D, of when light hits an edge, it looks bright, and then as it drops off, you see a shadow right here. And so by putting a little bit of a bright highlight right along the edge of the shadow, that's going to trick our eye into thinking that that shadow is dented in. So to get that, I'm just going to wet my brush. I probably should have gotten clean water, but meh. And then I'm going to pick up this glob of matte medium, work it into my bristles, and I'm going to get a slightly lighter, I'm going to start with a lighter version of this brown gray mixture. So I'm going to grab some brown, grab some black, and just slightly drag into my white. Okay, it's not perfectly mixed, it's a little marbled. And then I'm coming back in for more matte medium. The matte medium is also going to help so that all these other colors are visible underneath. And I'm just gonna bloop. And stamp it out. The matte medium is also going to help it on these edges dry a little bit more translucent. So to get that, I'm pulling a little bit of just matte medium. I still have the other colors marbled onto my brush and drag it out a little bit. But I want my edges to look choppy. I want them to look, you know, loose, because, you know, stone don't break nice and even. And I'm just going to give a little bit of light to this because it's a little darker in general. It's a little darker than I would have liked. It's okay. So I'm going right up against that shadow. Now, what I'm doing is a dry brush technique. I don't totally have a dry brush because I do have water on my brush, but I'm just letting the paint skim those high surfaces. Like I'm barely making any contact at all. Barely making any contact. I mean, I'm making contact, but it's very light contact. And again, I'm keeping that matte medium. It'll help keep some translucence to it. It'll help keep some spreadability to it. I'm not being precise about my color choices. I'm just getting a nice even blending. It's okay to scumble. It's okay to get it dug in there because, you know, stone ain't perfect. And I think a lot of the beauty that's in stone is its imperfections. And again, I'm trying to focus the lighter colors up towards the top of the tombstone and slightly darker towards the bottom of the tombstone, because again, that adds to the natural way that the tombstone would age. Closer to the ground would leach some of those darker soil colors a little bit. And just like everything else I do in life, get your fingers in it. Life tastes better with craft supplies on your hands. And I feel like I may have gone a little too white right there, and that's okay. All we do is we come back into our brown and black mixture. Kick it back a little bit. It's okay. I also feel like this brush might be losing some of its stippliness. And again, I will wait for it to dry. And then when we come back, we will talk about stenciling in some picture of some sort or some wording. A lot of times I let the natural stone dictate what's happening. Sometimes in situations where, like the Donald Duck hat, that was straight up planned. Billy Butcherson was straight up planned. I knew exactly what I wanted those tombstones to be going in when we cut them out. This one, because it's just a generic little tombstone shape, with this kind of shape, I let what the tombstone says come to me. I know that sounds ridiculous. All right. I will see you when this layer is dry.
2 hours later.
Okay, so this has had some drying time. I let it dry for a couple of hours. In that time, you can see that my matte medium did its job. It's got some gorgeous marbling. The hot white spots that I put in there have cooled down a little bit because the matte medium alters the opacity of the paint, and so they're now bright spots, but they're not as like glaringly scary looking as they kind of were to begin with. I'm really happy with the coloring of this so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on my lettering. And while I was letting this dry, I was thinking about what I wanted this tombstone to say. And this guy is little. He's only 11 by 12. So I kind of felt like the simplicity of it reminded me of the line in Nightmare Before Christmas where Jack is singing, "What Have I Done?" And it's the line, "In a million years, all that will be left is a pile of ash and a plaque that reads, 'Here lies poor old Jack.'" So I did that just on a piece of printer paper with the date 1993 because that's the year the movie came out. And I feel like that's really all this needs to transfer my letters. If you're not confident in freehanding, that's okay. You can either try the technique we're going to attempt right now, or you could stencil if you're good with stenciling, or you have access to really cute stencils, or if you have access to a Cricut, you could do something with your Cricut to make stencils. These are all really, really viable options. So, but what we're gonna do is I'm confident in my freehanding ability. I'm just wanting to show you guys that if you're not a freehander, it's okay. So I'm just taking a piece of sidewalk chalk that I stole out of my kid's sidewalk chalk bin and going to town here. The reason that I'm using a vibrant color is so that it shows up. And if it gets everywhere, it's okay. It'll wash off with water, just like it washes off the driveway. Right? Don't tell her I stole her blue chalk, because, you know, skies are on everything. And I also know that this is not going to come out perfect. I'm not looking for complete perfection because the texture, the stone texture that was created by adding sand and dirt and a little bit of gravel to my paint is going to make the texture of my transfer a little wonky, but that's okay. It still gives me a better idea than if I was completely freehanding it. And then we're gonna center it. And then we find the pencil that's on the other side of the room. I don't know if you guys can see that. That is right there. So it's not very vibrant. I'm gonna have to push as really hard as I can. And then I did choose my font specifically for looking like the Nightmare Before Christmas font because I felt like that was appropriate. And that's a free font that's on Fonts. I hope you guys can see that. He was poor old Jack. And again, because it's chalk, if you don't like it, you can just white it out, wash it out with water. Oh.
A few moments later.
Okay, I filled in these lines with Sharpies so that you guys at home can see them as well as I can. And also too, so I don't smear the chalk off with my hand, because I'm known to do that. I do rest my hand on my workstation pretty regularly. And if you want to stop at Sharpie, you utterly and completely can. I think our first set of Tombstones was Sharpie, and they're still in decent shape because we did put a coat of polyurethane on them. Or you can take it one step further. I want to add some highlights and some shading and stuff like that to again add to that 3D texture. And so I'm going to go with paint. I've got black and Burt Umber, Mars Black Burt Umber, and I'm working with a number 3 round brush. Again, sticking with those craft brushes because the texture of this is going to chew this up like it's nobody's business. You know, brand new, did one tombstone. The thing with this is keeping your paint extremely watered down. I'm not adding matte medium to this. I'm just working with the 2 colors, but I am taking my wet brush. It's got drippy, pull some black into my brown. And I don't want it dripping off my brush. Like, I don't want it the consistency of water. But I definitely want it thin. And don't worry, this paint can be watered down a little bit without underbinding it. It's designed to be watered down a little bit. If you add too much water, you can underbind your paint. What that means is you're separating the molecules and it won't last. But I'm not going that far. It's still thick, it's still gloppy, it's not dripping off of my paintbrush. And I'm just gonna fill in my lines. And now I'm tilting this to accommodate my wrist. Now, if we didn't water down our paint a little bit, I'm not talking like, again, not talking about making it soup. Just water it down a little bit so it's got a little bit of flow. We'd end up with some drag. And you would see the texture through the paint. And hey, that might be the look you want too. That's okay if that's what you're going for. So at this point, I will put you guys into a time lapse and not make you suffer through 80 hours of me babbling. Now again, you could leave this here, or you could add some highlights. That's totally up to you. I'm going to proceed and add some highlights. And again, I'm still working with my 3-inch round. I'm just gonna put a little bit of the black brown mixture back on it because what's up here is already starting to dry. And just get a little bit of my white on there to get a muddy gray color. And again, I'm turning my tombstone for my elbow. I mean, my elbow and wrist health, but mostly my wrist health. And then I'm just gonna add, boop, ever so gently. Okay, so the trick with the highlights is making sure that they're all in the same essential direction. So I kept them all on the left-hand side of the tombstone, so that way it looks like the light is coming from this angle and catching those letters all in the same place.